So we are 24 hours removed from Bad Blood if you are watching this on day one, and the big conversation point afterwards is what should main event at the show. So I asked you and I got your Bad Blood reviews, and darn it, we have a verdict. We did an old poll on social media at simonmillermedia316, check it out, and I asked you, would you rather have CM Punk and Drew McIntyre main event at the pay-per-view premium live event, or were you happy with what happened? And I checked after 1,000 votes, I thought that was more than enough. Punk and Drew were at 63% and happy with what happened were 37%, but as you are going to see, and as I give you my take as well, ultimately, you can kind of be happy either way. Now, this is such an annoying discourse because people go, oh, Simon, you're so boring. You sit on the fence all the time. The truth is the truth, damn it. And Truth Magnum will be the first person to tell you that. But sometimes, it's just like being in a candy store and someone saying you can have all of the candy. Now, me personally, if I was in charge and there was no egos or nobody with any say and I got to choose absolutely everything, I would have had CM Punk and Drew McIntyre main event that show for two reasons. One, I felt like they deserved it, as stupid as that may sound. They'd had a feud that's going on since January, and the show was called Bad Blood. So quite clearly, the Hell in a Cell been planned in for a while. But also, two, I always think the best match, or the potential best match, should be the closer, because 9 times out of 10, there's a reason for that. Now listen, WWE are in such an amazing position right now. You can put Roman Reigns and Cody Rhodes in a main event, and no one can go, well, that doesn't make any sense, because of course it does. But again, more than one statement can be true, and this is when we bring The Rock into the equation. Of course The Rock should be closing a pay-per-view. It's the flipping Rock. As I said on my review yesterday of Bad Blood, please do check it out, video on the screen. My mum knows who Dwayne Johnson is. That's just a kind of fame that few wrestlers are ever going to get. So if all of a sudden he can turn up in Atlanta, Georgia, and you want to end Bad Blood that way because you know it's going to get the most conversation points, which is what WWE loves the most, I totally understand. But that doesn't mean that we can't then revisit our nerd stomachs, our nerd tum-tums, and start to go, well, that's great and all. And of course I pop big. I mean, everyone did go crazy for the final boss, but I still think it would have been nice for CM Punk and Drew McIntyre to be in that spot because once again, they totally earned it. And also, from a structural point of view, it was really hard to follow. It could be one of the best Hell in a Cell matches either. It's absolutely one of the best matches of the year. And I was having this conversation yesterday with someone. It probably is my favorite Drew McIntyre match ever. And it could be my favorite CM Punk match ever too. And that's not a slight on them. They have an amazing catalog of fights they've had over the last, 10, 15, 20 years, whatever it may be. But whether it's because of my age now, how I watch wrestling, how I'm able to share my wrestling thoughts, there was just something both during and after it that I was just like, wow, this is wonderful stuff. And maybe it's because for a long old while, WWE did move away from long-term storytelling. The last few years, they're right back into it. And this was kind of one outside of the bloodline, which I think we had all gotten used to. And it was just so nice. They got every single thing right. Like, it's cool to put your geek hat on and go, what else could we have done here? What could we have changed? I don't think there's anything that I would have changed. They were able to get a bag of beads over. Now, the only thing that annoys me is instantly people go into comparison territory online. They're like, oh man, I've never seen an emotional thumbtack spot like that. Well, then you haven't been watching wrestling, because again, it all ties into the narrative you've been telling up to this point. I've watched plenty of hardcore matches where they remove the tacks and it ties into exactly the issue they're trying to get across. But here they were able to do it in a different way. But that's what wrestling should be about. How can you come up with something individualistic? How can you come up with something novel? How can you come up with something new? And that's what they achieved. And essentially, this was a love letter to not only their own feud, but to wrestling in general. We had the sharpshooter spot, which of course was a callback to Bret Hart versus Steve Austin. You also had that bit where Punk sort of had the toolbox on the ring apron and he smacked Drew from behind, which I also think was a Bret Hart callback. And there were other elements as well to the Shawn Michaels and Undertaker Bad Blood Cell match back in 1997. I mean, CM Punk had the Shawn Michaels heart on his pants, for goodness sake. And that's what takes it up to the next height, because somebody also said, and more power to you. They went, without the blood, it wouldn't be very good. It had blood. I've been saying this since 2014. People that used to come to me when I reviewed Batman games, used to work in video games, oh, it wouldn't be very good if Batman wasn't in it. He's in it. He is there. So whatever allure and whatever personality Batman brings to the game, that's one of the reasons it's able to take a step up. So whoever made this has been super duper smart. When it comes to CM Punk versus Drew McIntyre, why are we even talking about this? The fact they did include blood, especially because it's so rare in WWE, heightened the emotional experience. But it's all these points, which is why it would have been great if this is how Bad Blood would have culminated, because everybody else did fine. I actually really enjoyed that tag match at the end. I thought it was super fun. But I think if someone came to me and said that Finn Balor versus Damian Priest kind of felt more like a Raw main event. You're being a little harsh, but I understand it. So I think there has to be a connection there. I thought Bayley and Nia Jax were super fun, but a lot of it was all over the place. So if you do shift things around, maybe it would have come across better to the audience. And yes, the Rhea Ripley, Liv Morgan finish, I'm 99% sure now, especially with the evidence that has come out there, was probably screwed up. And the referee saw it and he wasn't meant to see it. And Liv was still meant to get the pin over Rhea when Raquel helped. They're human beings, man. There's so much wrestling on TV. It's going to happen. And believe you me, if we are correct, no one is going to be more annoyed than them because they're very passionate and they're into this story. Although really the MVP of the entire night was Dominic Mysterio, who must have been hanging upside down from that Sark cage for a good 5 minutes. I think that's good for you. And just a super quick reminder, my friends, to go to GorillaMind.com/Simon and use the code Simon to get 10% off. There is a link in the description below. But also, if you keep an eye on the website, they are often doing 30% off, especially when it comes to their pre-workout, Gorilla Mode. There's a brand new version of this now. It is genuinely the best pre-workout I've ever had in my entire life, which is why I got on board with Gorilla Mind, because I was shouting about it so much. They sent me a message that said, Simon, you may as well be part of the team. It really is the best line of gym supplements I've ever used, and I've been training for over 20 years now, which is quite sad. And they even do stuff like multivitamins now, and it also ships worldwide. So again, it's always 10% off using my code Simon. And if you do keep an eye on GorillaMind.com, you never know, my friends, you may be getting up to 30% off. And they got an array of stuff as well. So check them out today. Supports me, supports the channel. I appreciate you, and I appreciate it. Now back to the video. Now, we do go to some of your comments, which I always do appreciate. And HBISB, he's my hero. He says, whatever WWE does, I'm cool with. Damn it, I like your attitude, although you can still be critical. That's fine too. We also cut to Lucy, and by the way, Lucy's account is Lucy is just Lucy, which I never noticed before. You should follow her. That's a good wrestling account. She just approaches wrestling in the right way, in my opinion. And she said it's not so much about it being Punk and Drew, it's about the Cell. I like a Hell in a Cell match to be on last. It feels more important, and it doesn't matter if the crowd wears themselves out afterwards. On the other hand, how do you not have The Rock be the show closer? Which is exactly where I fall upon it as well. It's like, do you want ice cream or do you want a cake? It depends what mood I'm in. And yesterday I was like, I think Drew versus Punk would have been good there. And I'm sure at some point in the week, especially if we get a follow-up on Raw and SmackDown, I will go the other way. That's just how brains work. So ultimately, it's a pointless conversation. Grant Ross says it should have been the Hell in the Cell after the feud going almost a year, and this being the end of it, and the fact it was the Cell, which the show was promoted around. However, with what happened in the last 5-10 minutes, they had to go the other way to get the biggest reactions. Brent Smith also says their match was the best match easily, but I had no issues with it being first and the show ending with The Rock. So you see, we have some normal people here. I Eat W Cred says, I thought starting with Drew versus Punk was great to set the tone of the event, but I felt it was slightly spoiled by the cheery way the hosts announced what was supposed to be a huge violent blow-up. Also not sure if the Rock cameo could have been placed anywhere else. Well, I'm very much an advocate for having surprises in the middle of events, just because I understand why you want to close it. It makes all the sense in the world. But sometimes I think it's fun to sort of play with the template to circumvent what people are expecting, which is why I was super pleased what they did with Kevin Owens and Cody Rhodes. Now, this is this idea that maybe they did that because they thought Kevin Owens was going to get cheered, because everybody loves a heel turn, especially because everybody loves Kevin Owens. But outside of all of that, doing it where you know that fans are going to record it so you can have this social media moment, awesome. I've seen plenty of heel turns happen in the ring. If you want to do one a little bit differently, please do it. So if you want to have The Rock turn up in the middle of the show, I actually think that would be pretty cool, but maybe I'm being a little bit of an idiot. Graham Wright says it was the biggest and best match and was tough on the women's match following it, but they couldn't have The Rock's return not be in the final part of the show, so there's a lot of that as well. And Mackay says them going first made the rest of the show hard to follow, unfortunately. Definitely should have gone last. And I do think there's an element to that, but it's the same as everything, right? If you have a starter and it's the greatest starter that you ever had, and then your main comes and it's just a McDonald's, well, McDonald's is great, but it's not going to taste as good because your eyes have just been blown open. And I truly do think that Drew CM Punk match was special. Like, I think it's something we're going to be talking about for a while. And if we can continue to reestablish the Cell as a dangerous place, which we've absolutely done now, I think almost that's the biggest positive from this. It will come back to what Punk and Drew did here. And ultimately, hopefully they can be the bastions of that. So if anybody even tries to do anything dumb, they even got that toolbox over. And I hate that toolbox. I hate it. I don't understand why it always has to be affiliated with the Cell. But here, it was so damn brutal. And that shot on Drew McIntyre's head, which apparently he just happily took in the skull so he would bleed more. Well, I mean, that's just stupid, to be honest. but my word, did it make for a good visual. Sora says, so hear me out, by not making the main event, you take the pressure off the performers, and they get to just worry about putting on the storytelling and enjoy themselves a bit more. Sora, I love you, but I don't know what that means, but I appreciate your opinion. And Howie Potter says, while the returns of both Jimmy Uso and The Rock were awesome, I think the show should have ended with CM Punk standing tall as the conquering hero. Putting their match on first took the gravitas of everything that came afterwards. In my opinion, I do think I tend to lean in that direction. Ultimately, I really don't care, because WWE put on a good event and I had a good time. But yeah, gun to my head, that's the way that I think that we should go. And listen, could you have The Rock come out? No, you couldn't do that. I was going to say, just do the tag match earlier in the show, and The Rock just comes out after Hell in a Cell, but then people are going to think that CM Punk and The Rock are going to feud. Well, I say it on the down low. I wouldn't mind that at all. And I love the Jimmy Uso return as well. I don't think we've really talked about that as much. The pop that he got just goes to show that the investment we put in the bloodline absolutely paid off. And that guy, to me, is just a joy. And he's the only real part of the bloodline story that didn't make sense for a while, when he just magically rejoined Roman Reigns. But sometimes when you commit to a bit down the line, it can work. And now it's just blind loyalty, right? He tried to get away from him, I guess Stockholm Syndrome. He wasn't able to do it. But now that Roman's a face, it just works better. And I suppose if you are going to craft a 4-year narrative, there's going to be the odd plot hole here and there. But there was just so much joy radiating out of my TV screen. And that's why I watch wrestling, man. I just want to be happy. Tommy says, it really did bother me a bit. They didn't close the show. They should have been rewarded for all the work they put in during the feud. I get why they didn't, but they beyond deserve to be in the main event. I really appreciate this well-balanced community I somehow accidentally have crafted for myself. And Cody Crybaby, meaning we may go in a different direction, says it's like being told you're going out to eat a roast dinner and a sticky toffee pudding for dessert, but you get the dessert first. While both were appreciated and the late additions to the family dinner were nice, having dessert first was just plain wrong. Well, is it Djokovic, the tennis player? I think he has his dessert first. I read a bit of article about this. It may not be him, but it's a big sports person, and he eats dinner in reverse. So I guess it's each to their own. But I like the fact this became a talking point, and if nothing else, I think it's absolutely, well, I mean, CM Punk's already a massive star, but it's established Drew going further, because again, we have The Rock coming back, who does just sit on top of the WWE. There's no two ways about it, and we're still able to have this discourse. That to me says that WWE's in a very good position. And listen, in 2025, John Cena is back as well. So strap yourselves in and enjoy the ride. I also want to talk about the Saudi Arabia stuff too, only because that was my actual real negative. I think the conversations about the Rock, CM Punk, and Drew McIntyre are fun chats that we should have. But the Saudi Arabia Championship that looks like it was made in a kid's toy factory. It's so damn big. It wouldn't even fit around my face, and my head is huge. It just is the opposite of what I want from WWE. And with the Saudi Arabia shows especially, they started to actually feel more like premium live events, pay-per-views, whatever you want to call them. And now this feels a little bit like a gimmick. And again, Cody versus Gunther is going to be amazing. I think you get away with it more between Nia Jax and Liv Morgan, because I never expected that feud. But Cody versus Gunther was something I saw happening down the line. I wanted there to be a proper story. And of course, you can still do it with this. Maybe this is what kicks it off. But I just don't like the fact it's been hit with fast forward. And I never really liked it with the Survivor Series stuff either. I was a huge advocate for changing to the War Games. I thought that was a much better gimmick. But I suppose one day we're all going to be dead, so at least we get to see Cody versus Gunther. For those people that got mad at me yesterday, I said it once, I'll say it twice, I'm all down for Gunther versus Goldberg. Give me those crazy matches. Put Shane McMahon in AEW, just come up with some crazy stuff. Otherwise, wrestling gets super duper boring. So I do appreciate your input, and I do hope you enjoy Bad Blood. I think if nothing else, come the end of 2024, WWE can be very pleased with how they've elevated their so-called B pay-per-views. They all feel like an amazing show. Now, you can have The Rock come back. It doesn't have to be a Mania, a SummerSlam, a Royal Rumble, or whatever, and people are perfectly cool with that, and maybe even expecting it. And again, where do we team up the mega powers in 2024 on a so-called B pay-per-view? So, any more thoughts? Drop them in the comments below. Please do like the video, share the video, and subscribe. Turn on all notifications, including for the mobile app. And if you do want my full review, it's on the screen. Please also go to grillermind.com/Simon. There was a little bit of an advert earlier, so I'll just leave it there. Otherwise, patreon.com/Simon316. A Go-Go Fitness using the code Simon20. Simon316 on all social media. Simon Miller on Cameo. Simon J. Miller on TikTok. And ProWrestlingTees.com/Simon Miller if you want dumb shirts like this, as I put my head out the screen by accident. 2 + 2 = potato is a phrase that we can all live our lives by. And what does it mean? Nobody knows. Goodbye.